I'm ready. Very good. Shalom, everybody. Today we're talking about Jacob. And I thought that will be, and I'm trying to make the case that there is a lot of, the Bible is not a book of history, it's a book of religion, it's a book of traditions, it's a book of teachings, it's a book of moral. But there is a lot of historicity on these biblical traditions. I don't agree with the Scandinavian school of biblical studies that say that everything is like Harry Potter. They invented everything in the exile. I don't buy it. It's traditions that they are mixed exaggerations with the historical data. And we try to see also from many sources. Today, since we're going to talk about Yaakov, I want to say something first about the name Yaakov. The name Israel, we found it, if you remember, when we talk about Mer Neftach, this is the son of Ramses the third. When he makes a campaign to Israel, he destroyed many cities, and he wrote in his stela, Israel no longer exists, there is no seed, I destroyed Israel. So the name Israel appears for the first time in 1205. Now, when the name Jacob appears, the name Jacob is popular in many tablets in the 17th and the 18th centuries BCE, and also lately was founded in Egypt, in the north of Egypt, and that's why some scholars say that he does the proof that Jacob was in Egypt. Jacob is one of the kings that they're called Hyksos by the Egyptians that governed there. So that will be the presence of Jacob on the land of Egypt. But I'm going to move forward on time to the year 925. Now, what happened in 925? We have two sources, a biblical source and an archaeological Egyptian source, that are telling the same story, obviously each one from his own perspective. This is found in the Bible, is in the first book of Kings in chapter 14, and it says that the king Shishak, this guy Shishak, I don't know how much you can say Shishak. Shishak came, according to most of the scholars, in the year 925 BCE, and destroy many cities. When he came back to Karnak, he made on the southern wall of the temple of Amun-Ra in Karnak, he made a monument. This is himself, and you see here is many. And you cannot see.
Yeah, we see.
There is many cartouches and kings that they brought with the Hevel, with the Hevel, okay, that he took them prisoners, destroyed the cities. So first is a proof, and maybe here you can see it better. Can you manage to see the?
Yes.
The kings brought with the things, and the big king is Shishak. Now, this is on the city of Karnak. I'm going to show you this, the map of ancient Egypt. And what we call Luxor today, here is Karnak. Last week when we talked about Amarna is here, right? And here is the delta. So this source is, we can see it here in the temple of Karnak, and in the southern wall of the temple, And we know about this king, Shishak is called in the Bible, Shoshenk. Shoshek is in the Egyptian source. This is the same. Shishak and Shoshek is the same because everybody wrote with consonants and not with vowels. So many hundred years after that, they say, how we call it? Shishak, Shoshek, Shoshak. We don't know. So it can be that it's Shishak, like the Bible say, and it can be that it's Shoshek, like the Egyptians, or maybe something. You know, they have the consonants and everybody add the vowels. Because if you don't know, also in Egyptian writings and also in biblical writings, we have the consonants, we don't have the vowels. So let's call him Shishak as the biblical tradition. So Shishak, we know by the Bible that he's friends with the Solomon, and he was weak at the beginning of his reign. He reigned from 943 to 922. Again, the scholars, they have a dispute of 2 years there, 2 years there, but for our purposes, the same. So at the beginning in 943, he is weak and he cannot conquer the land of Israel, so becomes friends with Solomon, and they try to have relationships with the people in Lebanon, commercial relations. After this, he becomes strong and he gives asylum to Yerovam ben Nevat. This is the one that's going to be the king of Israel. So Shishak bring to Egypt Yerovam ben Nevat. He escaped from Solomon, and eventually Shishak is going to help him to build the kingdom of Israel. What happened is that Yerovam ben Nevat returned to Israel. He created the kingdom of Israel, but he doesn't want to keep the covenant with the Shishak anymore. So at the end of his reign, 20 years after he becomes king, he decided to punish him. So he make a campaign against Israel. So you can see here in the map, these are everywhere you see the thing. These are the cities that he punished. Altogether, 43 cities in the land of Israel. So what is important in first, we can see that the cities that he punished, the cities appear here. We know the names because we can read the Egyptian hieroglyphs. So the order was not so clear. If the order, they didn't know if the order is like this and like this and this. Now the scholars, they say the order is like this. And why the order is important? Because, well, first we know that he punished mostly the cities in Israel and northern Judah. And this is because Israel was more developed, with more population, more rich than Judah. Judah was very little, and there is not much to gain by conquering cities in Judah at this time. The second thing which is important to us is that the way he goes, the cities that he conquers, he has to go away, right? You don't go and come back to Egypt. You go, you make a way, right, to conquer all of the cities. What is interesting is that the cities that he mentioned in Israel, the way that he goes is the same way that the Torah used to describe how Jacob built cities. So the same cities that, according to the Jewish tradition by Jacob, were built by Jacob, right? For example, he goes to Pnuel, and he go and create different Machanaim, different cities in the stories of Jacob. The same way that the Torah used for Jacob to build the cities is the same way that appears on the um, um, campaign of Shishak to the land of Israel. What is proof? This is a proof that the Jacob exists. No, we don't have a picture of Jacob uh, drinking, I don't know, mate in the land of Israel. We don't have that. But the uh, the the name appears in other sources, and that the same tradition that we have in the Bible of how Jacob go in the way building cities appears in an archaeological source. Now, how, if somebody invent this story, how he managed to invent the same way for Jacob that is in an archaeological source? That's very hard. Now, also, this is in 925. All of these little settlements that Jacob have a dream, and then he make the city, until this settlement, there was only a monument by Jacob, becomes a city, takes hundreds of years. So this put the tradition of Jacob founding the cities in the kingdom of Israel to many hundred years before, because it takes a long time until 2-3 rocks become a city that is worth enough for the king in Egypt to destroy. Just to give you an example, in this campaign, Shishak don't even bother go to Jerusalem. So the cities that he's destroying probably have better worth than the city of Jerusalem to bring the army and destroy. I'm going to be very cautious, but I'm going to say something. So we have a name that we see in sources on the 18, 17, 16 centuries BC. Is a name that doesn't appear later. They stop using this name, Yaakov. Yaakov El is a name that it was spoken. My name is Edgar. I didn't find many Edgars younger than me. I mean, maybe it's a name that they used a long time, but people don't use it anymore. So the same is with Jacob. It's a name that they use it in older times, and also the traditions in the Bible. It's very hard to be invented exactly with the same road that we only discover in an archaeological finding only after we know how to read hieroglyphs, because until the Rosetta Stone, we didn't know how to read it. I mean, who knows how to read these things? Now we know how to read these things, and still this dispute on how to read it. So I'm not going to say that every single tradition in the Bible was exactly like it's written, but I just want to say, from an academic point of view, maximalist academic point of view, that the idea, the tradition that they have, the people in northern Israel, that the founder of the settlements, the population, the people in the north of Israel is a person called Jacob, that everybody knows he is the father of the nation of Israel. After this, they changed the name to Israel or whatever. It takes time. It has to be before the 12th century, because in 1205 Mer Neftach quote the name of Israel. So this put us Jacob having settlements on the north of Israel with all his tribe and his family and whatever, a few hundred years before, very much like the biblical tradition says. And I'm going to rest my case with this and passing you the microphone.
Well, thank you, Edgar. I think you made an excellent case for there having been a biblical Jacob and the cities that he built indeed existed. Unfortunately, even back then, they not only were built by him, but were torn down or destroyed or attacked by Shishak. And that seems to be also something that's still going on, is the attacking of Israeli cities. So that's a sad thing. Let's see. So I hope I'm on share screen now. Fran, can you see? Yes?
Yes.
Good. But just before I begin, um, I'm going to mention that there are many synagogues that are called Bet Yaakov or Bet Israel. There are hospitals that are called Beth Israel. And Beth Jacob in Minnesota is a hospital that was established by a personal mentor of mine who became a dear friend and a role model and was a great humanitarian physician. And he died this week. And his name was Larry Savet. And the book that he wrote, maybe you can see that, is called The Human Side of Medicine, with a kind of subtitle, Learning What It's Like to Be a Patient and What It's Like to Be a Physician. And so I'd like to feel that this class about Jacob mentions Beth Jacob and mentions and is in honor of Larry Savet, Lawrence Savet, who wrote that. That said, again, biblical Jacob appears in the names of many synagogues, and we think about what that means to us. The name Jacob or the name Israel, which of course hospitals like Beth Israel were established before Israel was called Israel in the modern version. Okay, so in terms of the describing Jacob, who's later named Israel, he's an even more symbolic ancestor for Zionism than Abraham, because his very name becomes the name of the people. And we, all of us here on the Zoom, are called Bnei Yisrael, sons of Jacob, and the land, Eretz Yisrael. So the relationship between his biblical story and modern Zionist thought plays out in several layers. First of all, there's the shift that he changes. He's a complex character, like many people in the Bible. He schemes for his brother's birthright. He negotiates very shrewdly with Laban. He wrestles with the divine mysterious being in Genesis 32. And his transformation into Israel, a new name, marks a covenantal reaffirmation and a new role as patriarch of the 12 tribes and of our people. There are the three patriarchs, and it ends with Jacob, right? It's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Yitzchak and Jacob. The land connection, well, Jacob receives the covenant promise originally given to Abraham and Isaac that the land of Canaan will be for his descendants. And he receives that promise at Bet El. Bet El or Bethel is, of course, saying house of God, right? Bet, Bayit, El, Elohim, in Genesis 28. And Jacob personally returns from exile in Haran to Canaan, and that's a motif that later Jewish tradition associates with the return from exile. The years outside the land and the perilous journey back are a narrative that many Zionist thinkers found resonant. There are Zionist, we could say, appropriations or applications of Jacob. First of all, Jacob is the first Israel. His naming at Peniel, that you struggled with men and have prevailed, becomes a blueprint for the tenacity of Jewish people. His return back is read as a precursor to the modern Aliyah movement, and it's a divinely guided return for the religious Zionists after the long exile. And the land covenant with Bethel and with Shechem, which is, of course, still here, affirms the holiness and the divine right of the territory. The secular political Zionists also find application and inspiration and connection all the way back to Jacob. So Herzl and Nordau and others sometimes used Israel not just as a religious term, but as a national identity, which is rooted in Jacob's legacy, all of us being part of his legacy. His name change story was seen as a coming of age moment. A people emerged from family roots into a collective destiny. And his struggle, the name Yisrael, meaning wrestle with God, becomes a metaphor for the struggle to secure a homeland against political odds, or that our destiny is for persistence. The more cultural Zionists, like Echad Ha'am and others, appreciated Jacob again as clever and adaptable, morally tested, all traits needed or necessary for national revival. So he doesn't come across as a pure saint or a pure warrior, but as a survivor who transformed adversity into strength. And the stories of the 12 tribes give a narrative framework for seeing the Jewish people as a family with ancient roots, territorial roots. So we have these territorial roots in Zionism. We have Jabotinsky and the revisionists describing Jacob as a strategic thinker. So those of us who are Jabotinskyites or who have read about him and his ideology, Jabotinsky admired the toughness and the foresight. Jacob's strategic mind included outmaneuvering Laban and preparing for Esau, and that fit a worldview that valued both diplomacy and readiness for conflict. And we're still in that today, of course. And another aspect is that Jacob's sons defended, in one perspective of how they treated the issue of Dinah, their sister who was raped by Shechem, to be controversial. It's controversial in the rabbinic readings what happened to her exactly, but it could be reframed as an assertion of dignity and of national honor. The sons try to restore their honor. There are people who say, well, you don't have to be connected to the land, and that's the kind of anti-Zionist uses of Jacob, that Jacob's long waits and his prayers and his dependence on divine direction before moving in the land, cited as a model of patience and obedience, not rushing political sovereignty. And his exile in Egypt is seen as part of God's plan, suggesting that diaspora life can also be divinely ordained. And of course, we have people all over in the diaspora now too. And Jewish universalists stress that Israel, as Jacob, is a spiritual identity and not a political project. And the wrestling story is taken as a metaphor for inner moral struggle, not territorial conquest. And of course, the concept of struggle, which is sometimes discussed as jihad in Islam, is central to the Muslim faith. So some of the symbolic layers today is that the name Israel bridges the ancient covenant to the modern state's name. The exile and return embodies the collective, together all of us, Jewish pattern for departure, survival in diaspora, and eventual return. The struggle as destiny, whether it's religious or secular, is that Zionists see in Jacob's wrestling match the resilience that we need for state building. And in terms of the family and the nation, so the 12 tribes all descended from Jacob, and we'll talk some next time and the time after about the leaders of the tribes and their characters. They provide a foundational story for unity despite internal differences. And obviously we have internal differences among the Jews still relevant in today's social fabric. So if you were to name a synagogue today, would you be willing to call it Beth Jacob, Beth Israel? And how you feel that biblical Jacob or Israel impacts our Zionism are the relevant questions that I had for today. And we're going to start with Floris and then Michael.
Yes, I thought of it all week about Jacob and Israel, and I I um, I rather fancy Israel than Jacob because I found Jacob. I know he had a lot of trouble, but he was very. If you go into psychotherapy, it was like the bad part of the person, and Israel was the good part. The bad part was he uh, went with his mother to defraud the father that he was Esau. He wore the clothes and everything. Then he comes up to Laban, and then he then gets paid back karma. That Leah then becomes his wife rather than Rachel. But anyway, years later, when he wants to leave his father-in-law, he somehow manages to have the sheep how he wants it. So it was all, he wasn't uh, a good person as such. He survived. Whatever was thrown to him, he manipulated. Whereas Israel was more spiritual. When he got the name Israel, he was, I always saw it, the land was called Eretz HaKodesh, the Holy Land, and everything concerning with Israel. So if I had to name a synagogue, I would call it Bet Israel because I have more a leaning towards Israel than I have towards Jacob.
Well, that's a terrific psychological analysis of the two. And there have been many great psychologists who have also examined all of these biblical characters. And you did that great as a family therapist. We're going to get a little bit more into Jacob's family as we get to his 12 sons and how he handled their lives. That's
What's
beautiful.
very nice.
Michael?
I believe it or not, I agree with Flores regarding most of the things. I think of Jacob as an out and out manipulator. So I would not put him in a great light. And yet he changes after wrestling. So I would call it Israel, and possibly because that's what we call our country today. We don't call our country Jacob, we call it Israel. So there is probably our founding fathers thought very carefully as to what we were going to call our country. So therefore, it's the same thing when I look at a synagogue. We may be the house of Jacob because that was his original name, but I look it as if we should be using the name Israel instead.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point about what our founding fathers decided to do with the name of our country.
And then also,
It is good to recognize where we began, even if it is not as rosy as it might be, but the starting point of all sorts of things, you can decide how far back you go. So are we Bnei Yaakov or are we Bnei Yisrael? And the answer to that question is yes. We're both,
and then
and
also Israel refers to the bulk of the tribes.
yes, exactly. 10
We
of
don't say Judah because Judah only represents one of the tribes, but the largest. But Israel represented 10 tribes.
That's right. Okay, Liz, and then we have Anita and Fred there.
Jesse, I had a little problem with this because there's a lot of the people that you reference that I have no clue who they are, like Nordau, um, um, Ha'ad Ha'am.
Chadam.
Yeah, and there was another one, I don't remember what it was, but
Herzl,
even
you know.
Jabotinsky, I know the name, but I don't know anything about what that man has done in terms of his history with Israel. And so I feel very inadequate in talking about this right now. I can only say that many of the members of my family were born at a hospital in Newark, New Jersey that was called Beth Israel.
Hmm. Well,
And
there are many like that.
we called it the Beth.
The Beth.
The Beth, yes, referred.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to encourage you that Chad Ha'am and Herzl and Nordau and Jabotinsky are considered the founders of modern Zionism, and from different aspects. Jabotinsky, I'm going to say in the most simplified way in the world, is to say Menachem Begin and the people who formed the ideological rightists considered themselves Jabotinskyites. The Beitar movement was the movement that he set up. That's on kind of on the right side. And we're going to get into the names of the modern Zionists as we work historically closer and closer to what Zionism is for us today. And so that's okay if you don't know those names, but the more they come up, the more you may want to look them up on Wikipedia or books. They're really good books about these people who have provided our foundation. The Zionist idea of Herzberg that Michael just held up is
a good
is a
summary.
great source. It's a great source, compendium almost of the modern Zionists, but he doesn't go all the way back the way we're going back. So Anita, I saw you there, and now I don't see you.
Okay, you're first.
Okay, I've been appointed to go first,
Okay,
and I'm impressed.
and Sibi will be ready next.
Brenner's in here.
I'm impressed by Jacob and Israel being different aspects of the same person.
Hmm.
That Jacob's actions might today be called realpolitik, and without his actions, there would perhaps be no possibility for what you might call ethical politics to survive, to be practiced. So without Jacob's manipulations, maybe there'd never be the point where Israel would come to fruition. And this is perhaps true also of the history of the modern state of Israel, that you read about Ben Gurion, you read about Jabotinsky, you read about Begin. These were powerful people. They're not always nice guys. They engaged in realpolitik. They did what they thought had to be done to create a state. And it's easy for those of us who are living in the modern state to criticize without appreciating that without their actions, there might not be a modern state, probably wouldn't be a modern state. And you can compare that with reading some of Herzl's books, which are tremendously idealistic. But they didn't really account for how to overcome all of the barriers that were necessary for the state to be created. So I would think that perhaps an appreciation of Jacob versus Israel in this land might be reflected by the relative commonness of those two names among present-day Israelis. And I don't know if this is just me, but I know a lot more Yaakovs than I know Yisraels.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is perhaps a reflection of an appreciation of the need to be tough, the need to negotiate, the need to perhaps be scheming in order to survive, at least in the Middle East.
Well, that's an excellent point. And yes, it might not look so nice when we look back that those are the foundations we're standing on. But if not, then we might not be standing at all. So you present that very diplomatically. That's terrific. Anita?
Yeah, I agree with most of the things that Fred has said, and I think that it's hard to think about what it must have been like. And for survival, you're going to do lots of things. And in the end, it worked out. As to the name, I'm going to be on a very practical level. I simply like the way Beth Israel sounds better than Beth Yaakov. It's hard to say Beth Yaakov. It's probably because we're used to saying Beth Israel, and that's a common for schools, for synagogues, for hospitals. I have never encountered one. I've never been in a building that was called Beth Yaakov. Maybe I haven't. I didn't know it.
Jacob.
So on a practical point, I would lean that direction because it feels more comfortable, and it may be just the sound that feels more comfortable. It could be I'm responding to something that's more in depth, but probably not. That's my comments. I'll let other people speak up on it.
Well, okay, but you make a very good statement right from the beginning, as well as the ease on what you're used to hearing, that a lot needs to be done for survival. And we know again and again that freedom is something that has to be defended and has to be and it will be challenged, and always was. Sibi, are you ready? And then we're going to have Fran up. Sibi, you got to hit the unmute button. That's good.
Okay, so it's interesting because a lot of the places that were named house of or son of or whatever, when I was younger, the shuls became, instead of son of this one, it was Beth Jacob, Beth Israel. I graduated from Beth Israel Hospital, and we used to call it the Big Shul, and it became another name with the name Jacob in it. So as Israel became a state, in my little city, Springfield, Massachusetts, everything became with the Hebrew name, Beth or whatever. And it was nice to say, instead of the Congress Street Shul, to say son of Jacob. And so I just wanted to add that to it.
Yes, well, we are all Bnei Yaakov, which is the sons and daughters of Jacob. It's interesting sometimes to stop and note that we're all Bnei Adam, right, of Adam, and then we're all Bnei Noach, because everyone was destroyed other than Noach and his family. And then we are Bnei Avraham, Bnei Yitzchak, and Bnei Yaakov. That's who we are. And after that, it gets split into many different. And
Exactly.
talking about Judea and Judah, we'll get to that probably next week in terms of his children. So Fran, and then we're going to go to the Bronx, and we're going to hear from the Fetmans.
The name Jacob is has always been very present in my life personally. My mother's father was Jacob. My father was Jacob. My son is Michael Jacob, and his son is Elijah Jacob. And we have enough Jacobs in the family that we're able, from generation to generation, to keep the name going.
They don't do that now.
I'm sorry?
I say in Israel, they don't do that so much.
Some.
None of these people live in Israel.
No, I'm saying in Israel, there's a lot of modern names rather than the names of the patriarchs or matriarchs.
Okay. Nonetheless, this is what my family has done, and none of it's been in Israel. So they all lived in other places, Poland and the United States. But anyhow, that's the name is very much with me. I think I would be inclined to go with Beth Jacob. And I come from Atlanta where there is a Beth Jacob, and it's a matter of information. But the thing I look at these, and people have sort of said this, but maybe I see it in a slightly different way. All of our founders and our leaders have been, in a sense, chosen, and they've all been imperfect. And I think they part of the reason they were chosen because of imperfection as a model, if it were, saying imperfect people can be great leaders, that you don't have to be perfect, that even with a flaw, you do incredible things. And each of them did. And I think also the idea that as an example, you can start out imperfect and then you can proceed to become more perfect. And I think that's also true of the state of Israel, that is imperfect. And as a state, we are also struggling, even though we're already called Israel, to become more perfect. So that's just how I've always seen them, because all of them have imperfections and yet all of them are great. And I think that contrasts, in my mind, maybe I'm oversimplifying, with a Roman Catholic or the Catholic notion of saints who are essentially perfect, and I don't think we look for that. I don't think that's our story.
Well, that's a great humanitarian perspective and very optimistic, Fran. So I really like that point that even with early flaws, someone can get better and can become a great leader. I'm not sure if we could even if this group could choose someone who universally will be accepted as having been a great leader. I'd have to go back. I don't know if you want to think about Abraham Lincoln or who you would like to think about, but he probably did something wrong as a kid. So there is a development in every human being, and obviously there's no one who's always been terrific. And yes, Judaism has chosen people with all their dimples and flaws as our heroes or role models or most successful leaders.
If I can comment briefly, since you mentioned
Yeah.
Lincoln, Lincoln was a racist. Early in his life, he considered the African Americans to be racially inferior. So if you're talking about he was not perfect, and changed his point of view as time went on. So even the great Abraham Lincoln, as it were.
Gotcha. Okay. Nathan, I don't think we've been there in New Jersey yet.
Yep, no, I'm here.
And then we're going to cross the river to the Bronx. So
Okay.
let's hear you.
I'm not sure I have that much to add. I really liked what Fred and Anita had to say. Clearly, well, I know I have a nephew named Jacob, and Jacob is a common name still to this day. But I see, we have become Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel. From a religious perspective, I mean, the Shema is in the Torah. So I think that's what we're known as. And as far as the name of a synagogue, I like sometimes synagogues named after places. Many of us go to Congregation Netanya, so it's nice to have Beth Jacob or Beth Israel or B'nai Israel or whatever else, but it's kind of depends on that community, I think, as far as for a good name for a synagogue.
Yes. Well, Netanya, of course, is the synagogue's name is Natan Yah, synagogue in Netanya, meaning God gave it. And it is the name of your city when you're living here in Israel, as well as your synagogue. And there are certainly things that are named for the place, and the importance of those places comes out as Edgar pointed out, that we have these places named, then we know that there was a Jacob and that he did have these cities built. Could we get you unmuted there in the Bronx? We don't see you and we don't hear you. If you can hit either of those buttons, then we'll be able to hear you. And there we go. So now you're unmuted. if you can't get the camera, so at least we can hear you, and that'll be fine too.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Well, it was very difficult to get you on the screen, and I missed most of it, so I'm going to pass because and I didn't get the link yesterday, and I didn't get the link today, and I sent you an email, and I didn't get a response. So I'm going to call Apple and see what, and I had 196 people tracking me. So I don't know what they're after, but they're playing havoc with my computer. Sorry. I would like to see the text and I would like to catch up.
Okay. The trackers are called cookies. They're not actually people. It's a computer tracking, but that's okay. I'm glad. Obviously, the link must have gotten through at least today because you got through. Is Ted there? Is he going to comment?
Do you want to comment?
I got here a bit after Beverly, so I have even less to say. So
Okay. Well, you are the one person here who actually had a glance at Jabotinsky, and we did have some discussion earlier about who that is, and we're going to have a lot more when we get to the modern. I'm going to say modern, but he's not alive anymore either, of course. But we will get to him, and I know you have a lot of thoughts about him, having grown up in Beitar and having once seen or glanced at Jabotinsky when he was in New York. So I think that's it for today. We kept very close focus today on synagogue naming, but I think we can also all identify with the concepts of struggle and the concepts of being renamed. I don't know how many of you got renamed. I've been semi-renamed since I'm in Israel. In Israel, I go by Yishai, which is the Hebrew for Jesse. And so I have people calling me Jesse and people calling me Yishai, and I don't try to change them. They get to call me whichever they want. My Teudat Zahut is Yishai, and Yishai in the Bible is the father of David. So that's fine. Edgar did mention the trip on December 3rd, and if a carload of people would make it as far as Haifa and then would join us on a bus to Tzipori with the Holocaust survivors that we've been supporting both with food vouchers monthly in recent years and with lots of Jewish content. So you'd be very welcome to join, and Edgar will give you the specifics in Netanya about that, and I'll be giving it to the rest of the people who associate with us, and I hope that will be a moving event for the year because this is
We can
deep
even
year.
Ishai, if there is people from Netanya willing, we can bring a taxi from Netanya to Tzipori. If it's, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 people, and they can join us in the thing and just say like it will be parallel to the bus. I'm going to offer, and then if it's people interested, that will be
Perfect.
nice. So we do it together.
Very nice.
Okay.
Okay, so next week we're going to move on to Bnei Yaakov or Bnei Israel. I got your message here, friend. Good. And we will move forward in our exploration of Zionism, still back to biblical historic levels, as Edgar talked about them, and historic levels. But we are working our way, and we will get, have no fear, Liz, to Achad Ha'am and to Herzl and to the modern Zionists as we try to define our own Zionism, which is also part of what we're trying to do here. So Shabbat Shalom.